Hello, I'm Professor Lieu. Welcome to our live stream. I'm joined today with art prof teaching artist Alex Rowe. And today we are showing featured entries from the October Art Dare, which was called Which Word Will It Be? If you would like to grow as an artist and you can't afford an art class, we've got everything you need here at Art Prof: critiques, tutorials, and professional development. The art dare that we had in October was, wow, a marathon. And a lot of you guys, I have to say, powered through this challenge because we basically gave you guys a word for every single day of the month and asked you to create a daily piece. It was not a requirement to finish all of the words. To enter whatever amount of the challenge you were able to do was great. However, some of you did do every single piece, which kudos to all of you guys who really put in the time and effort for that. And if you did not see the stream, basically what we did is I closed my eyes, I picked up something that had text on it, pointed, and we had our words. There was an incredible range of words, different languages, things that weren't even really words in a way. And I'm not an illustrator. I don't have a lot of experience with words and text, but you do, Alex. What do you think is so hard about navigating that relationship between text and image?
I think without a doubt, the hardest thing is facing the cliche of the first thing that comes to mind and addressing it creatively. Actually, yeah, we talked about this with Deepti in our Scream on cliches and how to avoid them. And you want something that's translatable to people when they see it, but also not the first stop idea. And especially with these words being so broad, so diverse, some of them just being sound effects, some of them being English or different languages or out of context, it's amazing the challenge that was posed. Even with these two on the screen now, rosemary is, okay, you can think of a couple directions, but don't. So many more different connotations with that. And so it's not just a technical exercise, but also a creative one of how to get your mind to think of concepts.
And Alex, I know you have done things like Inktober in the past. I never have because I always knew I could never pull it off. But can you just talk about that stamina that you need to be able to do so many pieces in such a short period of time?
It is so much more challenging than you think it is. And then anyone who's done it knows the difficulty in staying motivated, making those plans throughout the day. Because I've tried Inktober several times, but I've only succeeded in doing it every single day once. And you have to really plan ahead, and you have to be, I think, patient with your progress. Because you'll hit this dip where you'll have good days and bad days with it. You'll have good ideas and bad ideas. And to do it every day teaches you that persistence to continually produce, even if you close a day and it's the worst drawing you've ever made, but at least you made it.
Well, we're going to start out with Erica Yong, who, by the way, is live with us here in the chat. And if you guys are one of the featured artists, tell us in the chat so we can give you a shout out. Erica saying, love the range of prompts for this month. Really pushed me to not go for the first or the most obvious thing, which let me tell you guys really paid attention to me when I gave you that challenge. When we had the opening video, I said, listen, don't go for, like Alex said, the most cliche, obvious response. Dig deeper, do that thinking, do that brainstorming. So Alex, we have Erica here from Malaysia. And Erica says in their statement that they've been reflecting on this year. They're thinking about growth. The feeling of time being meaningless made me think deeply about how I have journeyed through the months. And the concepts that came to mind with each word made more sense in comic form. So, for example, there are scales with the, quote, fish, or how inokitake reminds me of hot pot. So how do you think Erica did with this comic format?
I'm, first of all, so impressed by the amount of work that Erica bit off. Like, to do the whole comic page for each one, they're so well composed, so laid out. And I love the diversity of having a different color for each day and each word. They're really satisfying. especially the one, it was the ochreish yellow color a couple pages back. Like that's just so soothingly done for the constellation drawing and the fish and the changes within each one. Yeah, the growth and the consistency to a project for this one is really impressive.
And I really like this statement that Erica includes. They say, with the limitations forced me to be more creative in my imagery, making the support or even enhance my writing, which really is perfect for the comic book format. So I think a lot of you guys found that this really was an exercise in thinking more than it was actually physically making the artwork. It really, I think, makes you just dig that much deeper to get that idea. Okay, so the next artist we are going to show is Eline VD Steen. And Eline says, I decided to keep it as simple as possible, only using a fine liner in 2 colors, black and white. Real challenge was to create cohesion behind the randomly selected words. I used metamorphoses as a way to show the connection between the objects. Surprised me how easy it was to find similarities in these words, how it led me to creating almost paradoxical scenes. So many different formats, Alex, because Erica did a comic, and yet Eline did one image for the whole month. What's your take on this?
This one's so cool, and I couldn't help but chuckle when you said in the artist statement, I tried to keep it simple, and this image is far from simple. It's facing the challenge of the really strong technical ability thrown and grown throughout this piece, but also the overall challenge of a composition that you're planning as you go. Because correct, each word was revealed that day, so you couldn't plan ahead and do the whole day in one go. So you had to have intent for how to make this a cohesive piece as it goes along. And that's just really nicely done throughout this. It's so fun to explore little details in there too. I'm just a sucker for those.
And it's so hard, I think, when you have so many little bits and pieces, and then to say to yourself, how does this stuff actually fit together? And I think a lot of people really took advantage of the spontaneity of the dare, knowing that they could not plan certain things in advance. I think people really gave into that instead of fighting against it, which I think is something a lot of us do pretty often. Erica is saying, it was Alex and Kat's comic stream that gave me that kick to start on comics. Been really wanting to start making some, and the Art Dare felt like a good platform to start on. Yeah, because it's like so cool. Such low stakes for the artwork. It's like if it goes wrong, like who really cares? It doesn't actually matter that much, which is really cool.
Yeah, and it's such a good way to think of how to first use the comic format of just, you got to make a lot of pages to learn about how that works.
Okay, so the next artist we have is Jason Dye, who is from France. And Jason has an incredible range of variety, not just in terms of styles, but in terms of formats, even in terms of media. So we're going to show a whole bunch of these to you guys while I read Jason's statement. And even we get to see the mind map and some thumbnail sketches that Jason made. So Jason explains about the fish piece. I first did a mind map around the word fish. Based on the concepts of the mind map, I did 4 thumbnail studies. Finally, I decided to go with the concept fish as an eccentric person, coming from the expression odd fish. My fish person is wearing a blue suit, fierce dancing disco with wavy seaweeds, a true odd fish.
I love it. It's just, my first thought is like, I would love to slap a sticker of that on like my computer. It would just fit in perfectly. Just, and the thumbnails for it are incredible. But I got to echo what you said of just the breadth and the range of Jason's work is absolutely mind-boggling. Where at a glance, you're almost not sure they're all by the same artist. But just the breadth of exploration here is so impressive. Because I think that is one way to look at a big project like this, is rather than I'm going to get really good at this one thing, it's like I'm going to really dive in and explore all the things that interest me, whether it's pattern or graphic design or pastel. It's really incredible to see these explore.
Yeah, and I love how Jason's pieces, some of them are very graphic. This one's just lines. We've had pieces by Jason that were full out color. And how cool is this one? This is a stream of consciousness literally writing to the number 200. What do you think about this, Alex?
It's just, again, right when I think looking at all of Jason's pieces, like, okay, like they're all at least in this realm. This one gets into the abstract expressionist surreal form too, like they're really the whole gamut of what you can do visually with this challenge.
And I really like some of these comments, like Cyber Shadow Moon is saying that don't would make a cool t-shirt.
100%.
Dara is saying such a good range of styles. And that one person says, odd, no, fancy. So there's a lot going on in here. Like some people might say, oh, well, we have a bunch of pieces that feel somewhat mismatched. But to me, I almost feel like you could see this art dare is a month-long brainstorming session for future projects. Have you ever done that, Alex?
I haven't yet, but honestly, this seems like the best way to go about it. Like, of just set yourself this challenge of deep exploration.
Okay, the next artist we are going to look at, and I'm really sorry if I mispronounce her name, Noor-ul-Nihar Malik from Pakistan. And Noor did so many pieces. Wow, some of you guys really powered through all of this.
I love that.
Yeah, and so Noor says that their motivation was having access to the Art Prof Discord motivated me to work for the art dares. Getting feedback from the fellow artists there is very encouraging. Tell us in the chat, how many of you guys worked on the art dare or ones in the past and have been getting feedback and support from other artists in the Discord? Because that just seems so helpful to have that community. Don't you think, Alex?
Oh, yeah. And especially now, but always for artists, that community is so hard to find sometimes. Not even critique groups or more formal settings, but just, hey, more casual, I did this cool thing. What do you think? It's so important, I think, to keep that up just as much as it is to hone the craft more.
And I think there is something about feeling like you're all in the same boat together. Like there's always some part of the challenge which is extra difficult. And somehow hearing that other people are struggling with the same thing, coming together and sharing solutions is another really wonderful way to go about doing that. So if you guys have not joined the Discord, come hang out with us there because there's some really cool things going on. Yeah, like 10,000 Crows says, yes, everyone's so nice and supportive. Tom G says feedback is huge. I love this community. And John Murph says, I like the brain in the clever drawing or painting. So how about Noor's pieces, Alex? What do you think? They're all very different from each other.
Oh, yeah. In a similar way as Jason, just the breadth of exploration is impressive. But for me with Noor's, I love the sense of wit throughout them. Like some of them are just like laugh out loud funny and just very interesting takes on them. Like I love that kind of montage of, again, for all of these slippery, just that almost everything they think of for slippery being depicted in such a lighthearted and playful way. And then at the same time, you'll have pieces like this Rosemary, which is very apparently like an exploration of the delicacy of that plant and those leaves, and like an almost intent biological study of them.
And actually, Noor says in their statement that they actually had these rules for how they created their pieces. So they said, if the word is a noun like battery, then I would make a pattern for printing or sticker sheets. If the verb like kill or it's an adjective, crispy or slippery, then use it in a comic style illustration or newspaper ad. I mean, isn't that fun to have these miniature guidelines within your own art challenge? It's so cool.
Yeah. And like, if any of you guys watching now are anything like me, where you both think that that's really cool to explore styles, but it's like, oh, I would never figure out how to do that. Like in my case, I would keep wanting to do the same style that I know. So to have a framework like that, to like an extra challenge to lay on yourself for the stream, is such a good idea.
Angie S. is saying the Discord is the best community on the internet. Thank you very much. And thank you also to our wonderful mods who make that possible. And I also love this comment from Erica, who says the other entries people posted also made me want to continue with my own work. Yeah, because sometimes you do something like this challenge, which is so big, it's easy to lose motivation and say, oh, I'm sort of done. And sometimes you just need that one nudge from somebody in the community that says, no, don't give up. Keep going. It's going to be really good, right?
Yeah, because that's the big charge with a lot of the artistic challenges throughout the internet, and especially with the Art Prof Monthly there, is sometimes all it takes is seeing other people not giving up for you to maintain it. Like how it's sometimes easier to run with a friend than it is to run just by yourself.
Oh, and I just want to give a big shout out to Noor, who is live with us in the chat. Noor is saying the dare encouraged me to make more dares. Awesome. So yeah, it's a really great community. So next up, we have Paula V. Fernandez from the Philippines. And Paula explains in their statement that they are a hobby artist, and this is their first time attempting an art dare or any type of daily art challenge. And couple of things that Paula explains they wanted to do was develop the habit, doing some kind of art daily, practicing their pencil drawing skill, and work from real life objects whenever possible. Paula says that experimenting and testing my drawing skills through the word prompts, and that the art dare was hard, but it was fun. And Paula did so many. I mean, I can't remember, but I think, Paula, you did almost all of them, if not all. So Alex, what do you think about Paula's pencil drawings?
This one, yeah, Paula's explanation of just focusing in on pencil and honing that craft is so cool, especially with that last one of the waterfalls. That's such a successful drawing because look at how much of it is dependent on not making marks. Like by just recognizing, okay, I'm going to leave the white of the page as the cascading waterfall. It is so effective. And the mark making used to differentiate with the rocks eventually is so cool. And just honing in on these objects and really exploring them, you can absolutely see the growth in the medium throughout the month. It's so cool.
And so many different types of compositions. I love the point of view. In this one, this is, quote, my slippery slippers. I just love that it's drawn from the point of view of an artist, the artist. But then, as Paula also explains in the statement, that they were trying to use as many real life objects as possible, you can see the degree of detail and involvement that happens in all of these pieces. And so Paula also says, I have a better sense of what areas I need to work on, but I'm also now less apprehensive when starting a drawing. And I think that comes with just doing it again and again and again. Don't you think that repetition, that daily thing, it's like there's nothing like that, don't you think?
Oh, absolutely. And fear can be the biggest obstacle to that. And I think a lot of that fear is a fear of failure at it. Like you wanting so badly to do a good drawing that it's just easier to not draw because you're afraid of it. But when you keep doing it, you'll realize, one, it's not so bad once you do it. And two, if you see a problem in a drawing, that's such a good sign because it tells you how to improve. It's amazing.
Okay, next artist we have is Genevieve Barlos, who is from Scotland. And Genevieve explains in their statement that they are a medic. And Genevieve says, I try to branch away from the most obvious response. I am not really an ink artist, but really wanted to have a go at getting better with using line rather than relying on shading. And Genevieve says that they wanted to practice cartoon work and figures, watching some of the Art Prof streams, and have a go at some character design and costume design. So what do you think about these pen drawings, Alex?
These are so cool. And pen can be really stressful, especially if you're unfamiliar with it, because pencil you can not just erase, but by the pressure you can change the mark making and the thickness and the darkness. But with pen, it's just so concrete, like, no, this will be a dark black mark, period. And just seeing Jenny get bold with these of starting to use the full black background here, or focusing on the design work or the details or exploring piece by piece, it's, again, such a good exploration of a specific media to build up your skill set.
For sure. And I think a couple of the explanations, I mean, Genevieve wrote an explanation for every image, and Genevieve did the whole challenge. So at some point, we will be posting these statements on the main site, artprof.org. But for now, I can tell you guys that for Genevieve, night means night shift. And Genevieve explains, many of my shifts are nights as a medic. I often eat breakfast after the sun has set. I both love and hate night shifts. They're exhausting. I dread going in, but I've been fortunate to work with amazing people, learned heaps. There's something wonderful about the quiet of a hospital at night. It is a privilege to see this world. And so really relating it back to your own personal experience, I think it makes the words have more meaning. They're not just some random thing that you're literally illustrating.
Yeah.
Okay, we have a comment from Cyber Shadow Moon who says, I can see a visible increase in quality in these from picture to picture. Great job, Genevieve. And John Murph says, the patience required to do those lines, I'm envious. It's a lot to do. Okay, so next artist we have up is Carol Avila from the US. And Carol explains, I wanted to think outside the box with words that were chosen. Really wanted to work with colored pencil because it's a medium I have been scared of my whole life, but I found using it regularly in October has been really enjoyable. How do you think Carol did, Alex?
I think Carol did great. The pigs are so eerily charming. I love them. And it's so cool where not just Carol, but everyone who submitted to us, they all have that cynicism of, this is a very hard challenge, and I also wanted to make it more difficult. Like, no one has said their artist statement, well, this was a hard challenge, so I decided to use a medium that I knew very well and just do the same old thing. Like, taking these as an opportunity to face fear and growth is incredible. And especially with colored pencil, because it is so challenging. Like, looking at how this one, how bold and fresh the mark making is getting versus the others, and how that subtlety is sometimes incorporated stronger. It's a really cool understanding of the medium through this.
And I want to give a quick shout out because Carol is live with us here in the chat. So thank you so much for joining us, Carol, so we can show everybody all the stuff you did. I just think it's so funny that this one is kill, because a lot of people, you give them the word kill, you think, dagger, something, somebody being murdered or something. And it's like, it's a mouse. It's like, how do you get from kill to a mouse? And it's like, I love hearing the development of the ideas. Carol, I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was something about trying to get rid of a mouse in your house. I can't remember. You can tell us in the chat what's more accurate. But I think for those of you guys who were really trying to avoid the most literal, obvious response, you guys totally did that. So really great job. What about this one, Alex? NGH.
Yeah, that was, and I think there were some mentions in the chat earlier where NGH was definitely the curveball thrown throughout the entire thing. It's amazing that, people thinking and examining how to illustrate and depict the sound effect of like, and it's just so satisfying and comical in this.
Carol says, I need the owls to come kill the mice in my roof. That's what it was. I knew you were trying to get rid of them. I just couldn't remember exactly how or why. And Carol, as a child of the 80s, I died when I saw this. Alex, can you explain this for the younger generation? Why Slippery is John Bon Jovi?
Yeah, because of the great album Slippery When Wet, and it just is perfect. That is just such a good road trip album. I have to play it every time I go for a long drive.
It's great. And it's such a range, Carol, because I feel like this one is so heartwarming and kind and comfortable. But then other people are also saying that the pigs were really cute. And yet Erica says those pigs look like they're staring into my soul. So there's definitely quite an emotional range to your work, Carol, that I think is just wonderful.
Yeah.
Okay. The next artist we're going to look at, I don't know how to say her name. I'm sorry. Danielle Fowler from the US. And Danielle says, I have no formal art training, and they are choosing a very unfamiliar medium, similar to Carol did, pencil drawing, as the majority of my work has been watercolor pieces. And so Danielle's out of the box way of dealing with this was to do a bird for every single illustration. And so this is an ostrich, but this was an illustration for death because apparently the deadliest bird is an ostrich. What do you think of this, Alex?
I believe it because there's an ostrich farm in Arizona where I grew up, in between Tucson and Phoenix. And they'll nibble at you. So I don't know if they're the most deadly bird, but they are deadly. And it's such a cool concept of, again, like making the challenge even more challenging of, in this case, looking at the concept of, okay, how can I assure that I can be thematically consistent and also not go with the most basic idea for each prompt, and to be like, oh, whatever bird that word will suggest is perfect. That's such a cool idea. And a good way to explore. One of my favorite things in illustrating large series is learning about something new. Like in this case, birds. Diving into the biology of them would be fascinating.
Yeah, look at this. John Murph says, I guess it could poke your eyes and then you can bleed to death. Yes, you can, if you encounter an ostrich the right way.
I'd imagine they could also like kick you, or I don't know.
Yikes. Yeah, there's all kinds of things that could happen, I suppose. I mean, one of my favorites that Danielle did was crispy, was one of the words. And so they did Peking duck.
It's so good.
I just love that. And I do think, along with all of you guys, when I got some of those words, oftentimes I didn't know what the words were, because there was one that was Karnataka, which is an area in India. I forget if it's a town or village, but anyway, it's in India. And I didn't even know what it was. Like, I just had this Indian cookbook and I just landed on that word. And then some of the words were in other languages, because sometimes you have multiple translations on like a bag of chips or something. So tell us in the chat, you guys, what is the strangest piece of trivia or information that you learned during this art dare? Because like you said, Alex, as illustrators, you have to do that research. You have to learn all these new things. It's so fun, isn't it?
Oh yeah. Like that's the thing that's like in the harder times kept me going with it, is having those thoughts of like, oh, this is just so fun to dive into these fun little details.
All right. The next artist we have is Lisa H. from the US. And Lisa explains, I researched the word and then I brainstorm in a notebook with my husband. That's a good husband. You better hang on to that husband. And so Lisa actually ended up making these videos, very short animated sequences. So I'm going to start showing you guys some of those right now as we read the statement. And Lisa explains, I kept the videos short and simple, no audio. Each video I discovered or rediscovered something. Practice does help you learn, and it was really fun. What do you think about this, Alex, as we play through all of her animations?
These are so cool. I'm also just an absurd sucker for stop motion animation. Like, it's so clever, like how it's using the real potato and the slow motion carving, and not just props, but also acting with your own hands in the image is such a cool way to do it.
Yeah, and stop motion animation, this is not something that you throw together in a few minutes. This takes planning. It takes time to figure out what materials. You have to figure out the sequence. And look at how different this one we're looking at, which is death. So different from the potato one.
Yeah, and the making the puppet of the skeleton figure and the movement, it's, yeah, like for people who haven't made stop motion puppets, you have to do a different piece for every element of movement you want for it. It's incredible.
I will say, Alex, this enoki take
is so satisfying.
What is it about moving clay that just feels so good? Like, it's so awkward and not smooth and perfect, and yet I love it more than anything else in animation.
It's so funny because, like, it makes me always think there's a really good friend of mine who has just an irrational fear of claymation. Like, it came up when I mentioned how Chicken Run is one of the best movies ever made, and they were just, no, it scares me. Like, something about the clay moving, it's scary, but it's so satisfying.
Well, and I love that Lisa did not only clay, but that Lisa also has things like cheese graters that are a backdrop for these stop motion pieces. I mean, I think half the process here is finding the right objects and then figuring out exactly how are those objects really going to start to work together. What do you think about that?
At that creativity with it, because of the scale of stop motion, it makes me think of course, Lisa, I'm sure you've seen the Brothers Quay Street of Crocodiles. but it's so creative how some of the characters in that are even screws that are undone from a piece of wood. And it's just remarkable how creative you have to think on that small scale, which you did so successfully with these.
Yeah, we have a lot of really cool comments here. Like UWU says, "Oh my God, I would not have the patience." And Erica says, "The work that went into these is crazy." Johnny says, "Pretty funny. Love it." And Blue Wolf Spirit says, "I loved watching these." Yeah, and they're all so different from each other. And I really think maybe it's the quantity and the frequency that makes you do things you ordinarily wouldn't do. Like if we said to you guys, okay, you have a month to do one artwork, maybe you guys wouldn't have jumped off the cliff as much creatively. What do you think, Alex?
Yeah, I think there is something a little bit more incentivizing about, like, okay, essentially you have one a day, 24 hours, that's it. And you also have to do all the other things you do in a day. So that beautiful limit of you can't spend too long on it and noodle it away. You have to kind of get a concept and run with it.
Yeah, there really is not, I think, a lot of time to just fuss over things for hours and hours, the way sometimes we do when we have a little bit too much flexibility. Okay, the next artist is Jasmin, oh goodness, I'm not going to say this right, Weigelt from Germany. And Jasmin says that they wanted to use this art dare as a way to get back into watercolors, and that this was practice for a potential upcoming project with an old friend. He wants to write a children's book for his kids, asked if I'd be interested to do the illustrations. Well, this is a great way to get started. What do you think, Alex?
These are so wonderful. I mean, this is, of course, my soft spot with children's book illustration work, but the character in it is so good. The consistency of colors, like, just, yeah, the whimsy of them is wonderful. And I love this lens as well. Again, I think this is kind of the lens that I would instinctively go with it for myself, is I would choose to tell like a singular story around a character with all these different words. So it's such a cool way to go about this, and so appropriate for the children's book market.
So apparently Jasmin is with us here live in the chat, and also Lisa H as well. I want to just give you a quick shout out so we show that you were here live. But Jasmin is saying, "You pronounced my name perfectly." Whoa! Okay, I guess like beginner's luck, that type of thing. Very cool. So yeah, I mean, I love the consistency here because it's the same character, but the character gets into so many different circumstances. And the range of compositions is really fantastic. What do you think about the environments, Alex?
They're incredible. And this image is like, so I think it's my favorite one from this series. It's so well done, and it does the darkness and the thrill of like reading under the covers perfectly. And that real trick of designing a character and making them still recognizable in different situations, different poses, different facial expressions is so much harder than it seems.
And by the way, you guys can see in the slides, we have everybody's Instagram handles, but they're also in the video description below. And I encourage you guys to check out everybody's Instagram, but also Jasmin happens to be finishing every single one right now. And I think, Jasmin, last time I saw you only have like 2 or 3 more to go. So check them out because, of course, because of time and space, we couldn't show every piece that everybody made, but definitely go see what people are up to because I think it's really inspiring. Okay, the next artist is Rafael Sangga from Indonesia. And I wanted to just show this slide because Rafael did wonderful thumbnails that you can see on the right. And the image on the left, I think this is like my husband's high school report card, like back when they used to print on those computer sheets. But anyway, that's where we got the word battery. We see Rafael's sketches on the right, and then this was the final. What do you think, Alex?
It's so, I can't help but like see the like spooky Halloween true crime October-ness of battery, of like the evidence item, like for a murder weapon. It's just so good.
And then
Yeah,
how about
and
these? Because what's interesting about Raphael's pieces is that they're really minimal. There are not 5,000 colors and brush work and all over. It's just pencil. There's a lot of white space, and there's not a huge amount of detail either. And yet, some of these to me are very moving. Like this was actually one of my favorites, this one on death. It's a bed. And
Mhm.
I love that so much because if you think about the most obvious ways to interpret death, people draw the Grim Reaper, they have a gravestone, but I don't know that this one to me was so chilling and just beautiful at the same time.
Oh yeah, the kind of ethereal light pencil work just is so successful with it. And on a more technical standpoint, this one and the image of the cars as well has such a industrial design quality of a fine attention to the detail and the mechanical structure of them, be it a car or the bed. They're just illustrated and depicted so perfectly.
And I want to give a quick shout out because Raphael is live with us here in the chat. So great to have all
Mm.
of you guys here for the stream so you can talk to us about your pieces. And we do have a slide towards the end where Raphael put together all the images into a single slide so you guys can really see the scope. But yeah, like 10,000 Crows is saying, yes, I love the minimalism. And let's see, Dara is saying, I'm really digging the simplicity of these. And Lisa H says, a single bed rings true for death. Now, what about this one, Alex? This one's so ambiguous.
Mm. I love it because the prompt word is why. And it kind of makes me think of this, at least for me, I have this weird sense of like, why would people knock over like a house of cards or dominoes? Like you build this beautiful thing and it's just like it's kind of interesting. Or the why could be that single impetus moment that gets the ball rolling, you know?
Yeah, and what I like about a lot of Raphael's pieces is that some of them are more straight and to the point, and others you really got to think harder about it. So I think what a lot of you guys did with this challenge is you really asked your audience to look at your work differently. So it's not just a quick, obvious read. It's something where you really do have to break it down a little bit more to understand everything. Yeah, so this is the slide of all of Raphael's images all at once. And it's just great to see them together as a huge group. All right, guys, the winners are, we have an honorable mention and we also have a prize winner to give out. But again, kudos to all of you guys for your incredible work this month. This was really amazing the way people work so hard and put so much time into the dare. The honorable mention goes to Lisa H., who did all of the stop motion animation pieces. Alex, this blew us away. I mean,
These
this
were
was such an
so cool.
amazing set of animations.
Yeah, and just the body of work and the massive not just the work involved in it, but the quality as well. It wasn't just, okay, I'm going to tinker away at this thing and spend all of this time on it, and it's just merp. It's no, it's the quality as well. Just so much focus and detail to make it smooth animation, diverse animation, using different props and materials. It was just, yeah, like big round of applause for this one. It was so cool.
What a great collection of little stills, Lisa. And we were just so impressed by your set design, your lighting, I mean, you were doing all of it all at once by yourself. And I just love that you were able to accomplish that. All right, our prize winner is Genevieve Barlos from Scotland for doing these ink drawings. And in addition to the pieces that we showed you guys in the slideshow, we do have 2 slides that show all of the pieces that Genevieve did for the entire month, which is mind-boggling because you guys saw how refined and how invested every illustration was that we showed you. What do you think, Alex?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's kind of why it's just the champ in this because it was just so much focus and detail every single day and just that big nonstop push for growth. And it's so cool to see it throughout a month. And to me, when I finished the Inktober that one time, it was so satisfying to lay all the drawings out, and you can just see the growth. Like nothing's more self-evident than that moment. And it's so cool.
Yeah, so Genevieve, I'm not sure you get to tell us anymore that you're not so experienced in ink, because you clearly are from all of the work that you put in this month. So great job. It's a beautiful series of drawings, and I think we can see there was tremendous growth involved. And thank you to all of you guys who are supporting each other. Tara saying well deserved. Ryan says congrats. Walt Evans says great show. Komodo says awesome inking. Keith says congratulations. I mean, the fact that you guys turn out and root for each other like this, that's really special, because I think that we all know the internet is not exactly the place where people are known for being generous, and seeing the way you guys support each other is just really lovely to see. Remember, there are just a few more days left for you guys to participate in the November Art Dare, which is focusing on fingerprints. So show us what you guys are up to, and we would love to see what you're doing. Remember to tag us on Instagram, art.prof, and use hashtag ArtProfShare so we can see all of your stuff. ArtProf has a podcast. It's available on Spotify and also on iTunes. And in a few minutes, Alex and I will be chatting live in the ArtProf Discord. We will be in the post live streams channel. We'd love to chat with you guys about sushi and the pumpkin pie I ate this morning for breakfast, which is an annual tradition at my house. And we want to give a big shout out to our top Patreon supporters who make it possible for us to keep ArtProf 100% free and accessible to everybody. Thank you so much for participating. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.